Good afternoon. I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Kesed Sabbath Fellowship, and I'm asking you what time it is on God's clock. We've been covering these sessions, and you've been watching them all the way along about Revelation 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and all the way through. Now we're up to chapter 12. It's about a woman, and this will be one of the most interesting sections that I'll ever cover. So please stay with me, and it's going to get even more incredible towards the end as I link to the Old Testament from Revelation directly. So we'll see if you like that. It will be one where you either like what I have to say today or you hate what I have to say. So please stay with me. Okay, the first question we have to ask about Revelation 12 is she Israel? Is that what the woman stands for? Or is she Mary? Or is there another meaning? Who is this man-child? And is this an Exodus, the Exodus, or another Exodus? Where's this wilderness? Who is the dragon? Is the dragon allowed to accuse in heaven to this day? Is this dragon still up there accusing, or on the earth for that matter too? And who is the remnant keeping the commandments and testimony of Messiah Yeshua? So we will discuss these points and see if you agree with me, if you disagree, but at least we can talk about it. As we always do, we go back to the basics of why we're even talking about Revelation. And that is because the disciples came to him on the Mount of Olives and said, when will these things happen? Tell us. And what will be the sign that you are coming? And the Olam Jose, the everyday world, is ending. And when is this marriage supper that you've been talking about? So, Jesus tells them in Matthew 24, this is the Olivet Discourse, before the birth pangs come, the increasing birth pangs will, before the birth comes, the pangs get increasing. So watch out, don't let anyone fool you. You'll see false prophets performing great miracles and saying, I'm the Messiah, and expect many being led astray, hearing the noise of wars. Don't become frightened. The end is not yet to come. People will fight against each other. Nations will fight against each other. You'll have increased famines and earthquakes. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs. Now, I'm arguing that we're literally pregnant right now, that there are many signs, and you're not aware of all of them. I'm going to catalog them in just a moment here, and here they are. This happened to be something that I clipped out of the news today. I don't agree with everything that Dave Williams has to say, but it's intriguing that he lists these points. So let's discuss what I think are the birth pangs. The focus is on the Middle East, especially Israel. Point number 2, Russia. They keep on talking about Russia. The word Rosh in Hebrew means head or chief or leader, and it has nothing to do really with Russia. Russia will be involved, but Turkey is more important, and all 7 cities in chapters 2 and 3 of Revelation deal with Turkey. That is the area, Asia Minor. So when you look at Russia, don't listen to all these other people that are saying, oh, it's Russia, Russia, Russia. It's like Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. Just give it up. It is Gog, Magog, say it right in the Hebrew way, and it's in the Turkey area, okay? And that's where the armies gather and come against Israel, okay? Says, Israel would be surrounded by those bent on its annihilation. Yes, true. Anti-Semitism is on the increase. There's deception everywhere. It's rampant. There's chaos. If you look at politics today, it's been chaotic, but it's even more chaotic now because the left and the right are so far apart. And we shouldn't be following this side or that side. We should be following God's side. We're looking for a political star, not really. We want our Messiah to arrive, not this politician. Famines are occurring across the world. There are rumors of war. There's epidemics and pandemics. There's earthquakes. There's natural disasters. Technology is advancing. I sold software up until 3 months ago, and so I understand how quickly the software is changing the world, and tech is changing. AI, artificial intelligence, things like that are moving so fast. Okay, terrorism. All we hear today is terrorism. I'm recording in early April of 2018, and so when you see the terrorism coming at Israel right now from every side, you know that is a sign of the end times. There's this weird desire to talk about sex all the time. We've never had this problem before, but that's all people talk about, sex and materialism. It's just odd, okay? Betrayals, family problems, families being son against father, mother against daughter. These are all biblical birth pangs, okay? When you see a genuine Holy Spirit-led revival, that should be a sign of the end times. But keep in mind, there's a false revival and a true revival, so be careful. Choose the right revival. So Jesus cites people like Joel, and Peter cites this also. This is chapter 2. And after this, I will pour out my Spirit on all humanity. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. And also on male and female slaves in those days, I will pour out my Spirit. I will show wonders in the sky and on the earth, blood, fire, and columns of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness and the moon into blood. These are birth pangs before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. That's Joel chapter 2, and Peter quoted it again. Okay, now we're going to run through in the birth pangs where we are in the timeline, like we do every single video. The seals have already occurred. We've already gone through those, and now we're in chapter 12. So we're done as of chapter 11 with the trumpets, the 7 trumpets. We're waiting for the bowls. We're in a narrative break that I call, oh, here's the trumpets. That's where we are exactly, the 7th trumpet. But I call these pregnant pauses, where God will teach you something and take a pregnant pause and discuss some point that's really, really important. And that's what we're doing right now in chapters 12, 13, 14. Everything basically from 10 to 15 is a narrative break. Okay? And so he does this frequently in the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. He does it all the time there. It isn't so apparent when you read Paul or when you read the Gospels, but it is there consistently. It's a narrative break that he'll do, and he wants to teach us in Hebrew poetic form. This is like this. You'll especially see that when I get to chapter 14 in a couple of weeks here. Okay? And so what you want to look for is the poetic form, the comparative thoughts. Okay? It's not a rhyme necessarily unless you understand Hebrew thought, which is rhyming thoughts. Okay? These narrative breaks don't fit into patterns in terms of they're just there, and you can't always say they're exactly at this time or that time. Sometimes you can find the time date stamp, but they're not always chronological. Okay, we're ready to go with Revelation 12. The first thing we see is this sign in the sky. So every fall, this happens to be the 23rd of September 2017, you see this. This is a constellation. So this is the Virgo, and Leo's next to her, and so those stars of Leo are above her head, and then you've got the sun behind her head and the moon at her feet, and she's reclining in the sky every fall, every time around Yom Teruah, which is we call it the Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, but it really isn't. It's just blowing of a warning trumpet, a warlike trumpet, okay, every fall. Now, that doesn't mean there's a rapture on that day every year, but lots of people mention that. The problem is, this is astrology and astronomy. I mean, God made the stars, but when you study this out, it seems like astrology. So let's dig through it. And also, there's another problem with it, which is everybody predicts raptures all the time. Oh, there's going to be a rapture this day, and right now we're in Passover 2018, and they're predicting a rapture coming up again too. So don't get caught up in the hype, the hysteria. Don't pick days, okay? Every fall, we're going to have this woman reclining, and the sun behind, and the moon, and you're going to see these things every single fall. That doesn't mean it's a rapture time. Okay, I discussed astronomy versus astrology. We can look at the stars and see the North Star and guide our compass by that. But in this case, we're going to discuss how signs are important, not as astrology signs, but as just knowing that they're signs from God of certain things. So he calls it here in Genesis 1:14, signs of something important. Seasons, Moedim, are festivals, days and years, and they're lights for the dome in the sky to give light to the earth, and that's how it was. He made 2 great lights. The sun, he calls it the larger light to rule the day, and the smaller light to rule the night. So God is telling us that these lights, these stars, these planets, these other things like that, are not astrology. They're just basic astronomy. And now as we get into this in just a second here into Revelation 12, you'll see that it sounds like astrology, but really it's just another sign that we have to watch. Okay? And he's saying until the time of the end, and this is from Daniel. He kind of cites how this matches up with these Moedim. So let's just read this. Even though some of those with discernment will stumble, and I do discern and I read the Bible as well as anybody else on the planet, but even I will stumble at times, especially over Revelation 12, so that some of them will be refined, purified, and cleansed. We want that to occur. For an end is yet to come at the designated time. That would be like a Moedim, a festival. The king, the beast, we'll call him, the Antichrist, will do as he pleases. He will exalt himself and consider himself greater than any god. He will utter monstrous blasphemies against the God of gods. He will prosper until the period of wrath is over, and that term is kala in the Hebrew, which means bride. So when you're kalad, you're wed. And so for what has been determined must take place. Once again, this shows a picture, not quite as reclining as it should be, but you've got the sun there, you've got the moon underneath their feet, you've got Leo above. So this is typical every fall. This happens to be a sign that was from September 11th from 3 BC. Does that mean that Jesus was born during that time? I don't know, but it happens every fall. Okay, we're into Revelation 12. What signs? There was a great sign, was seen in heaven, a reclining woman. Some people say it's Mary, some people say it's Israel, clothed with the sun, and under her feet was the moon, and her head was a crown, a Stephanos, which is, if we think of crowns, there's a diadem, which is a king's crown. A Stephanos is more like a winner's crown. So if I won a race, say, I would get that wreath. Okay? And then 12 stars. So that's the crown of the Stephanos. So it's not a kingly crown. It's more like she won something. Okay, 12 stars, and she was pregnant and about to give birth, and she screamed in agony. Okay, so we've got birth pangs. They could be related to our Revelation 6, say, through 9 birth pangs, but in this case, they seem to be birthing something. So let's discuss it. And then another sign was seen in heaven, and there was a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. That sounds like astrology again, and on his heads were 7 royal crowns. Now these are diadems, so these are real live crowns, okay, for kings. And its tail swept a third of the stars, angels. Angels are considered stars, okay, that's just Hebrew poetic form. But when? I don't know when. Out of heaven and threw them down to the earth. So obviously these angels were cast out, okay, and stood in front of the woman about to give birth so that it might devour the child. The moment it was born, she gave birth to a son, a male child. When I dig through the Bible and I see the word male child, I see the word prophet attached to it in most cases. So could this be Jesus, as some say? Could this be Israel? Or could this be just a prophet? And I'll explain why. It'll take me a while to be able to convince you of why I feel this way, but we'll see what you think. Okay, but the child was snatched up to heaven. Well, Jesus wasn't really snatched up to heaven as a child, and Israel can't be snatched up to God in his throne. So I think it's something else. What is a male child? This is from Samuel, 1 Samuel. And it's interesting because Hannah can't get pregnant, and she is the other wife. And so she's in a deep depression. She's praying to Adonai and cried out. And then she took a vow, and she said, Adonai Tezvot, master of legions, if you will notice how humiliated your servant is, if you will remember me and not forget your servant, but give your servant a male child, a prophet. Zerah Anashim is the actual Hebrew on this. And so it just means the seed of important men. Okay, prophet. Then I will give him to you as long as he lives. No razor. This is a Nazir vow when you don't cut his hair. Okay, will ever come to his head. She prayed for a long time before Adonai. As she did so, Eli was watching her mouth, and Hannah was speaking in her heart. Her lips moved, but her voice could not be heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. That's Methuo. It's interesting when you dig into Acts 2:15, when you see the disciples, when God's Spirit is given 40 days, 50 days technically, after we count the Omer, which is after Passover, and first fruits technically. Then what you see is they were appearing to be drunk, and it's Methuo for sure in the Greek there, but in the Septuagint, he thought she was drunk. She was in prayer, so it's a prayer type of a language. Okay? And so she wasn't drunk, and she did have Samuel then right after that. Okay, this is another verse that kind of relates to what a male child is in terms of a prophet. Why did God create people? We act like sheep and we don't relate well to him. So we all, like sheep, went astray. We turned each one to his own way. Yet Adonai laid on him the guilt of all of us. Or in fellowship with him, though mistreated, he was submissive. He did not open his mouth like a lamb, led to be slaughtered like a sheep silent before its shearers. He did not open his mouth. That's Isaiah 53. It's messianic, obviously. But what I want to say is that when we had the opportunity to relate to Jesus, we killed him. Okay, all of us did. All of our sins did. Okay, so I'm arguing not Jesus or Israel in Revelation 12. I'm not arguing Adam or Noah or Moses, but I'm saying these are human mediators. And Yeshua is God, human God. But in terms of relating to people that are mediators, God uses mediators all the way through because we don't relate well to God. And it has not gone well when we try to relate to God. The closer we get to God, the less we can relate. And I'll try to explain that to you. So we're going to use this relationship. We're going to show you how this works based on Passover. So let's look at it from a Passover connection. Why does God frequently compare humans to sheep? This isn't a flattering comparison. Sheep can't be forced to do something contrary to their nature. Sheep aren't sheepish. Sheep's greatest instinct is to flock. Sheep love to follow other sheep. Flocks seek light, higher ground, to spot enemies. Sheep, especially rams, are aggressive. They ram things. Sheep are like familiar settings and resist change. Sheep need and welcome shepherds, especially during birthing. And sheep aren't very intelligent. And now we're going to cover the Passover rams. This is a picture of about 100-pound Passover ram. They are aggressive, they're mean, they're bad. And so we'll discuss the Passover ram. And now this is the rule pertaining to it, the 1-year-old male, a ram. Speak to the assembly of Israel and say, on the 10th day of this month of Eve, which is the month that we're in right now during Passover, each man is to take a ram or a kid from his family, one per household, and share it with other people and have a feast offering for everyone that would come and eat of this. Except that the household is too small, then he and his next door neighbors should share one, dividing it and eating it. Your animal should be without defect, a ram in the first year, and you should choose it from either the sheep or the goats. And so then he inspects it 4 days. But bad things happen as he inspects it 4 days. The closer you get to someone that doesn't agree with you, the more it magnifies. So you are to keep it until the 14th day, 4 days of the month, and then the entire assembly of the community of Israel will slaughter it at dusk. They are to take some of the blood and smear it on the two sides of the top of the doorframe at the entrance of the house in which they eat it. But during this time frame that you keep him in this pen at your place, this ram gets bad. You'll want him dead by the end of the 4 days. He doesn't relate to you. He's a flocking animal, and you are a people. So he's going to run into you. He has no ability to socialize with people, but he can socialize very well in the herd. They have a herd mentality. If they get separated, they have no ability to interact or socialize with humans. They will butt doors, walls, people. They'll destroy the pen. They'll destroy you, and they'll want to determine that they are the alpha, not you. After 4 days, you will want to shek. That means to slaughter that ram. Okay? This is what they do. They're rams. They ram things. They ram people. They hurt people. They don't socialize well with us. But we don't socialize so well with God either. So let's discuss how we don't socialize with God when we get close to God from the scriptures. The closer you get, the more our filthiness magnifies. So don't forget how you made Adonai, your God, angry in the desert. From the day you left the hand of Egypt till you arrived at this place, you have been rebelling against Adonai. Also in Horeb, you made Adonai angry. Adonai was angry enough with you to destroy you, all of you, other than Moses. They keep on ramming into us because they are rams, they are sheep, and they don't relate to us. But do we relate well to God the closer we get to him? No, not really. So here's another example. Moshe pleaded with Adonai, his God, and he said, Adonai, why must your anger blaze against your own people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and a strong hand? Why let the Egyptians say it was with evil intentions that he led us out to slaughter them in the hills and wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, don't bring such disaster on your people. Once again, the closer we get to God, the more we realize he's omnipresent, he's omnipotent, he's omni-everything, and we are so fixed and finite. Another verse that matches with this. We as sheep hang around with other sheep, but we tend to cause problems. As for you, my flock, says Adonai Elohim, I will judge between the sheep and other sheep, between rams and billy goats. Wasn't it enough for you to feed with the best pasture and drink from the clearest water? Did you have to trample the rest of the pasture and follow the remaining water with your feet? So now my sheep eat what you have trampled with your feet and drink water followed by your feet. Okay, so we know that we are sheep-like. God keeps on comparing us to sheep because this is how we behave. Another verse that matches from Ezekiel is, therefore, here is what Adonai Elohim says to them: I will judge between the fat sheep and the thin sheep, because you push them with your flanks and shoulders and butt ram all the weak ones with your horns till you scatter them in every direction. Therefore I will save my flock. They will no longer be prey, and I will judge between sheep and other sheep. And this is an end times verse, but it also relates to the fact that we don't relate well to God. He views us as just ramming people around. Another verse from Ezekiel: I will raise up one shepherd, David, or a shepherd, or Yeshua, to be in charge of them. He will let them feed my servant David, Yeshua, man-child. He will pasture them and be their shepherd. I, Adonai, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. I, Adonai, have spoken. I will make a covenant of peace with them. Sounds like an end times verse, but he's not saying Yeshua, he's saying servant David. Or is that a code word for Yeshua? I think it's a man-child verse, so we'll explore that. And they will surely live in the desert and sleep in the forest. Okay? What I'm trying to explain to you, and I'll show you this in a graphic sense, is that if I jam this pen through this sheet of paper, and you can see it here, okay, what I can see as a two-dimensional type person is just that portion of the pen that happens to be sticking through the paper. God is multidimensional, and we can't relate to the whole pen. All we can relate to is the portion that we see right there. So what I'm trying to explain to you is we don't relate well to God, and just like God, or we don't relate well to sheep either, because they're a lower form of life than we are. But God has a plan for how to work with us, and I think it's because he wants human involvement. So let's go back and look at this one more time. The human mediators. Adam was a mediator at that point in time. Noah, Moses, the judges were all mediators. David was a mediator. Solomon was. Yeshua, but we killed him. Okay? That's how well we work with being mediated with. Okay? And now I'm citing the man-child. Continuing on. This is the verse from where we just read in chapter 12. She gave birth to a son, a male child, a prophet, the one who will rule over the nations with a staff of iron. But her child was snatched up to God in his throne. Then continuing on, I don't think that's Jesus. It doesn't sound like Jesus, doesn't sound like Israel. So let's look at this way. Only hold fast to what I have said, to what you have, until I, Jesus, come. Jesus is saying this to him. It's not him, because Jesus is saying that, who wins the victory and does what I want until the goal is reached. I will give him, who, authority over the nations. He will rule them with a staff of iron and dash them to pieces like pottery. Just as I have received authority from my Father, I will give it to him, not Jesus. He's giving it to someone. And I will give him the morning star. Those who have ears, let them hear what the Spirit is saying to the Messianic community. So in this case, Yeshua is the one speaking, saying, I'm going to give this person a staff of iron to be able to do things. And let's see what the staff of iron can be used for. This is Psalm talking about the rod of iron. I will proclaim the decree. Adonai said to me, you are my son. Today I became your father. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your inheritance. The whole wide world will be your possession. You will break them with an iron rod, shatter them like a clay pot. Then he hands the rod over to the man-child. I'm arguing that, because Yeshua would want human involvement. He would want a human mediator, because we don't relate well to God. Okay? This is Daniel's picture of this from Daniel 2. So he has this statue going on. So the head of gold, the chest of silver. Then down below you have the legs of iron, or silver first, and then the legs of iron, and then the feet that are just a mess. They're part iron and part clay. The kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. You saw the iron mixed with clay. That means that they will cement their alliances by intermarriages, but they won't stick together any more than iron blends with clay. In those days, the kings of heaven will establish a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom will not pass into the hands of another people. I will break to pieces and consume all those kingdoms, but it itself will stand forever. So he breaks this kingdom up with a rod of iron. This is the rest of it. Like the stone you saw, which without human hands separated itself from the mountain and broke to pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, the gold. The great God has revealed to the king what will happen in the future. The dream is true and the interpretation is reliable. So in this case, he uses a stone. In some cases, he uses a rod of iron. But either way, he breaks these false kingdoms and builds up his kingdom with that same rock. I'm asking you what time it is on God's clock. We're going to take a break now. and we'll be back to you in just a minute.